Anyway, just so you guys don't have to wait long, just listen to Darkness. Nothing. Yeah, I wanted to do this earlier. This is a stretch program that I wanted to show. It's not even a program. I only just got into stretching maybe about a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, because of one of my patients sort of got me into it. Sort of gave me a jump start, a head start. Well, not a head start, just a bit of a push, as you might would say. Right. Yeah, gonna be listening to stuff in the background as usual. Just need a timer on. So what I do is I try to stretch every single muscle group that I can, or just muscle that I can. It takes me about 30 to 40 minutes, just depending how much I whine throughout the whole entire thing, but we will see. Anyway, I'll just get started. I'll try my best to move the camera as well, just so you guys can see everything. Get basic stuff online, but this is the one that I do. It's very simple, nothing too complicated. It's practically everything. Maybe I might be missing one or two tiny muscles. We'll see. For the first one, I guess that I'll start off with, yeah, whatever. Start with our chest. Find any wall that you can. Arm up. Then just 90 degrees. You can go a bit higher if you want. If you want to work the costal, clavicular, I guess pectoral muscles. But then I go down here where you work more of the sternal fibers, which run right across towards your shoulder. Once you're across, turn forward. I need the timer. I'm gonna have some stuff in the background as well while I do this.
And what constitutes social connection? There are basically two forms of social connection that have been studied, and I'll review both as it relates to increasing our levels of happiness. And the first one is presence and eye contact, and the second is physical contact. So in terms of presence and eye contact, there's been a lot of studies about whether or not people exchange direct eye contact during conversation or not, dictating whether or not each individual in that interaction feels as if they had a connection. Now again, keep in mind that while we think of connection as relating to some deep or meaningful conversation, and oftentimes that can be the case, think for instance,
couple introductions with John O'Rourke,
romantic relationship or an excellent friendship where you really feel heard and understood, or at least to the extent that people are willing to explore certain topics.
First one's a pectoral muscle stretch. Very simple as that. Find any wall you can, find anything, just turn into it. So turn your shoulder into it,
attempt to
bring the
understand.
arm back and
That
whatnot.
certainly
Stay
can enhance
straight.
the sense of social connection, leading to
I hold each one of these stretches for about a
social
minute.
bonds, leading to increased happiness. But eye contact is also known to be an important feature. The thing about eye contact is that most people assume that a lot of eye contact, and in fact ongoing eye contact, is
like
critical
a timer app for
to
the
a
strain as
sense
well.
of
Maybe that might
connection.
be better.
And in fact, that's not the case. There's a recent paper I find really interesting that was published in Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in 2021. The title of this paper is Eye Contact Marks the Rise and Fall of Shared Attention in Conversation. I find this paper interesting for a number of reasons. First of all, my laboratory works on internal states and vision, so it relates directly to the work that my laboratory does, but also that it violates what I thought was a general rule of social connection, which is this idea that two people need to be focused on one another, that is, looking at one another directly and fairly consistently throughout a conversation in order for the feeling of connection to emerge. But it turns out that's not the case. And in fact, just to give you the takeaway, and then I'll flesh it out a little bit with some data, eye contact, or I should say mutual eye contact, so two people registering the presence of the other person, looking at them. You're looking at me and I'm looking at you. If you're watching this on YouTube, then perhaps we are actually doing this at that moment. And if you're listening, just know that I'm looking directly into the camera as I'm saying this at this moment. If we were to be looking directly at one another, that, it turns out, signals the next step, which is that it's very likely that we will each both look away. And that turns out to be a way in which we set and reset attention continually during conversation. Again, I really like this study because of the high fidelity, the high temporal precision, that is, the precision over time at which they looked at eye contact and engagement of attention between individuals. And they did this by looking at like pupil size and of course where the eyes were looking and so on and so forth.
Right.
The basic
The
takeaway
next
of the
one
study was the following.
is
And here
for
I'm
your
quoting from the
lats.
study. Quote, rather than
So I'm just reading some
maximizing
stuff.
shared attention,
Oh, next one's for your lats.
good
how I do
conversation may
this is-
require shifts in and out of shared
Probably
states,
do it on the wall.
accompanied
I do it
by
on my
eye
shelf.
contact. What this
One hand on
basically
top
says
here,
is that
straightened
when
out
two
here,
people are
making
involved
sure I'm
in
flexing
a
my
very, call it
core
an
and
intimate
turning my hip
conversation,
downwards,
but
just so
the
I
word
can
intimate should not
stretch
be
the lats a bit more. They sort of
misconstrued
attach
to
down
mean
here,
something
sort of
about
go up and then
intimacy or
wrap
sexual intimacy or
underneath.
physical intimacy,
Yeah,
just
that's right.
a
Underneath the
conversation in which
actual
both people
humerus
feel
itself. How I
present to
stretch
the
that out is
conversation
things up here.
and focused on that
elongate it.
conversation
Well,
and
I
that
guess you could just
conversation
do
and its
sideways
content
like this.
only. The
But I feel I
tendency
get
is
more
for
of a stretch
people
like doing
to
this.
take turns talking,
Have
although
something to
sometimes
hold on
depending
to
on the
as well.
individuals,
So
they might
sort of
interrupt
pull
more or
my way
less.
through it.
Again, interrupting
So what
can
I'm
be
doing is
a sign of
elongating,
interest. Doesn't always have to
trying
be
to
rude,
make
by
this
the way.
angle as wide
But
as I
they're
can.
sharing
and it turns.
information, hopefully about a common topic or set of topics. They will,
That's weird. I
at
thought
some
I had on
moment, look at
stopwatch.
one another, the study
there we go.
shows, and that
Yeah.
after briefly gazing directly
Here.
at one another, attention
Sink
peaks,
my
and
armpit
then they will
towards the
look
ground,
away,
and I
and
turn. I'm
attention
sort
will
of
get
turning like
reduced,
this.
and
just to
then
accentuate
the
the stretch.
conversation consists of a series of focusing back
then,
on
yeah, just
one
hold it for a
another
minute.
with their eyes, and then
That'll work with
focusing
my
off,
lats.
focusing on and focusing off.
Mainly
And
my
those
lats, teres, I
mutual
guess.
eye
On the
contact
side. A lot of
moments
these
actually
painful
predict
side
the
muscles here.
breaking of attention. So it's this ramping up of attention and breaking of attention, ramping of attention and breaking of attention. I think these are important results because they violate this stereotype or assumption that
Why I
deep social
hinge my hip
connection of the
downwards
sort
is
leading
so I
to
can get a bit more
happiness
stretch. If I arch my back, I get less of a stretch.
always
so I can
involves
move my hip
ongoing eye
underneath
contact
itself.
or ongoing focus. Just as with meditation, just as with any activity, frankly, we undergo shifts in attention and focus. That is, focus ramps up and then it breaks and then it re-engages. It ramps up, it breaks, and then it re-engages. And that, it turns out, is the basis of in-depth connected
Always try to remember
conversation.
to
So for those of
breathe.
you that are interested in
Breathe and
creating social
Don't try to
connection,
force it. Try to
Contact.
relax your way into it.
and in particular for the sake of increasing happiness, because it's
I'm
very clear
absolutely not a
that social
pro
connections,
when it comes to
even if
stretching.
they're fairly
I
superficial,
probably only
social
started this
connections
program
can
maybe
increase
about
our
3
sense of
weeks ago,
happiness.
but after a
Seeing
week, I
faces is
noticed
important.
incredible
Ideally
difference.
faces in person, although I
The
suppose
best way I
these
can put it
days
is,
over
it's
Zoom
nice to
or
move without feeling
other
impeded.
screen type medium would be a close second. But the point is that if you want to increase happiness, you need to have quality social connections. And if you want to have quality social connections, you need to be present and engage in those social connections. And that requires a viewing of each other's faces, ideally. Which is not to say that a phone call or text exchange can't be meaningful, but that faces are really the most powerful way to engage in social contact. And that eye contact, not consistent eye contact, but eye contact of the sort that builds up and then breaks and builds up and breaks across the interaction, is going to be the best way that we are aware of to feel that one had a real connection. This should also remove any pressure that you might feel to constantly look at somebody or to be completely eyes open, staring at them without blinking or diverting your attention at any point during a conversation. This also, frankly, is an opportunity where if somebody says, hey, you're not paying attention because you look away, that you may actually be engaging in what is the more typical form of healthy connection. I talked about this long ago in an episode about focus. It turns out when we are listening very intently to somebody
Okay, so
and
that's
trying
for
to
your
remember
lats.
the
Next one
information
that I
they're
do.
telling us, we
This is
will
one that I
often
do
close our
standing.
eyes,
If I
and
feel
that's not a
lazy, I
form
have
of
a-
lack of attention. That's
The
an
second
active
half of my
form
stretches I normally
tuning
do
in,
sitting
because we
down.
have so
I
much
do that first
of our
and
brain
feeling lazy.
devoted to
So it's one of
vision.
those things that I like to give
40%
advice
of
on.
our
Just
brain is
get
devoted to vision
started.
in some way or
Just once
another.
you get
When
started,
we close our eyes, we can
you
actually
sort of
devote
want to do
more
once you get
attentional
into it.
resources to
Chad has
remembering the
got himself
specifics of what
stuck
people are
behind here.
telling us. But again, please don't go through conversations with your eyes closed the entire time. I think that would certainly not be conducive to building social connection. So we know that
Well, the next one I
faces
need
are
resistance
important
bands
for social
because
connection as it relates to
I'm going to stretch my hip
happiness.
flexors.
And
And,
we know
essentially,
that
there's
eye
two ways
contact
about
is
it.
really
You can do a very
important
simple
for
way, just
building
bring this
social
up and
connection.
just pull it towards your butt.
Physical
Arch
contact
forward.
is also
The one that I do
important
is from
for
knees over
social
toes, guys.
connection,
And how you
not
test that
just
is
romantic
you wanna
or
lay on your
sexual
back.
type of connection. In fact, there's a form of physical connection that is present
bring one knee
in
up,
other primates,
let the other leg
present
out.
as far as
If
we
it
know,
drops,
in all mammals.
You do the
And
first
is
stretch I'm about to show
Also
you. Like your
very
legs
much
like
a
here,
feature of the
then you do a
human
different
nervous
stretch, which
system.
I'll do afterwards.
And that's something called
So
allo
it's one way
grooming.
just to test your hip
I imagine
flexibility
that most people
first.
probably haven't heard of allo grooming.
One
The
that
reason
I
I'm
need
bringing
is
up
the one that
allo
I hate the
grooming is that it
most.
stems from
You know, you'll see soon.
fairly extensive
It
literature
works both hip
about
flexors at least, which is nice.
pro-social, pro-happiness effects of pets on humans. In fact, if you want to
Where
read
am
up
I?
on this,
7 minutes.
there is a
Alright.
paper out of Yale University on this
I wish I
topic.
could give you
that was
guys a better
published in
angle,
2018.
but
The
this is the
title of
best
the
way I
paper
can
is
do
The
it.
Influence of
Essentially, both feet on
Interactions
the
with
sides,
Dogs on
And
Affect,
I just lean back.
aka emotion,
Key
anxiety,
trick
and
is to
arousal
have your
in
hip go
children.
underneath
It
itself.
references some other studies that were performed on humans. And the basic takeaway is that these so-called AAAs, animal-assisted activities, represent a really potent way to increase people, including children's feelings
1
of
minute.
well-being. Now, what's interesting about this to me is that dogs themselves don't really have to do much except be present in the room in order for these positive effects, that is,
Got room to
reductions
breathe.
in anxiety, increases in happiness, etc., to occur. And in fact, they can be very, very brief. As they describe in the paper, brief unstructured interactions with an unfamiliar dog, so you don't even need to know this dog, after exposure to a moderate stressor showed higher positive affect relevant participants received a soothing object or waited for the same amount of time. So just seeing a dog for a brief amount of time has been shown to reduce stress and improve happiness, or I should say increase feelings of happiness overall, than a child receiving a soothing object. At least for me, a little bit counterintuitive. I would have thought that children receiving a soothing object would have been a more powerful stimulus. But in fact, it wasn't, at least not in this study. The real question I think we should be asking ourselves is, what is it about interactions with others and with other animals that could potentially have this pro-social happiness enhancing effect? And the reason I raise this is also because I think many people are interested in either owning or having interactions with pets as a way to improve their feelings of well-being. And I say having interactions with because I myself am a good example of somebody who wasn't
So
always.
that's the first stretch that I
able
did
to
for,
have
like I
pets. So
said.
when I was a graduate student and a postdoc, I very much wanted a dog. Very, very, very much wanted a dog. In fact,
For
it was
this
a
test,
rule
just
in
to
my
see
family at
how
some
tight
point
your
that I
hip
wasn't
flexors are.
allowed to
If
talk
this leg
about
drops,
dogs
do that
anymore
stretch.
because I was
If this
talking
leg
about all
stays
the
up a
breeds
bit
of
higher
dogs,
than that,
going to
higher than perpendicular from the
dog
ground, you do
breeders,
this one.
examining different breeds, going to the pound, etc. But the point was that I was obsessed with getting a dog, but I knew I wasn't in a good position to own a dog yet. I didn't have the finances. I didn't have the correct living
Oh.
situation.
Just some basic information.
I did
I use
own
a
a dog.
resistance band over there to
At
slowly
the
lower
time I
myself
couldn't, so
down.
what I would do
I'm
is
not that
every
flexible
Sunday
yet.
I would go to a
But
place
essentially,
where
it just keeps
foster
going
dogs
down,
and
down,
they
and down,
have
as you can see
walkers
before.
that would walk their
Hold the
dogs. I would
resistance
also
band.
walk
The most scary part
my neighbor's dog.
is that thing coming off the door and flying at my face.
I was
But
being paid
whatever.
by getting
Is what
time
it is.
with those dogs. In fact, I put an ad at that time on Craigslist that I
But
would walk
another
those
hip
dogs
flexor stretch you can
free,
do.
and only a few people took that seriously. But of the
You can
ones
do it
that
on
did,
open
I had a
ground,
great little
one knee
cadre
down,
of dog
one leg up,
owners that would allow me
grab
to
the
take
back
their
foot,
dogs out, and I was
bring that
super
back
happy.
foot
It just made me very,
towards your
very
bottom,
happy, and I
and
really
then just
enjoyed
sort of
it.
lunge forward.
And frankly, it was a great opportunity for
But the
me
one that
to
I've
also
seen
get to
on
know the
Knees
various
Over Toes
dog breeds
guys
and
is
the different
he
dog
always has like a
temperaments,
wall
and to learn a bit about my
that he does it
ability to
against.
interact with dogs.
And I find it to be easier as well because with that wall at least,
Unfortunately, later I got a bulldog, and it turns out no
'Cause
matter
I lose
how
my
good a dog
balance.
walker you are,
if I lose
bulldogs
balance,
just
at least I
simply
hit
can't
this,
walk.
and I
In
get
fact,
to
if you
sort
ever
of
walk
save
with
myself a little bit.
bulldog, and you
But you try to get your
scratch
knee
or pet
as
that
close
dog,
as you get to
you'll
the
notice
wall,
that bulldogs
or what I'm
love
using here,
that.
my couch.
And I would
I need
argue
these pads because
having been a
my
dog
knees are
owner,
just
that they like it because it's an
fragile
opportunity for them to
and
stop
petite.
moving. That's more
And
about the
essentially that.
bulldog than what I'm
I'll
about
pull
to
my
tell
foot
you
towards
next,
my
which
butt,
is this principle
and I lunge
of
forward.
so-called allo grooming.
Hold that there for about a
Allo-grooming
minute.
is a pattern of behavior that's observed
And then
in
enjoy the
essentially
suffering.
all mammals, but very strongly in non-human primates and primates, where individuals within a species touch one another, and this is non-sexual touch. So this would be someone brushing somebody else's hair, or combing their hair, or even using a lint roller on them, for instance, or someone grooming somebody else. Now, typically, one needs to have an established relationship with this person, so it could be a professional type relationship where this is a barber cutting somebody's hair, hairdresser cutting some or styling somebody's hair, be somebody giving someone a manicure or a pedicure, be somebody doing skincare or massage for somebody in a professional context, or it could be two people who have agreed that it is appropriate for the context and for the relationship for one person to be grooming somebody else. And even, believe it or not, there's literature on this. This can even extend into the realm of people sort of cleaning and picking off other people. Now, when we see this in primates, it seems like a very cute and almost understandable behavior. We can see these pictures online. If you look them up, you can just look up allo grooming and you'll see a vast number of pictures of, for instance, baboons picking little things out of each other's hair, or grooming and kind of perusing one another to find things, presumably parasites or like little bits of plants or something like that that they want to remove from them. Allo grooming is known to stimulate a certain category of neurons called the C-tactile fibers. These are a particular category of so-called sensory neurons that innervate our skin. So these are literally like little endings of neurons, little wires that end up in the skin that when they're touched lightly tend to create a feeling of well-being in the person that's being touched. Again, this is consensual touch. It's very context appropriate, but it's known to increase levels of oxytocin, a hormone slash neurotransmitter. It's both really, that is known to evoke feelings of bond or of feeling bonded to somebody or something. And for many people, we hear about oxytocin and we think about bond between parent and child, in particular mother and infant, where it's been most extensively studied, or between two members of a romantic couple. But if you look at the literature on allo grooming, what you find is that when humans
20 more
one another,
seconds.
the increases in oxytocin that are experienced are at least on par
And every
with,
time I fuck up, add
in
another
fact,
5 seconds.
more often more dramatic in response to allo grooming than in response to other forms of touch. So the point here is that allo grooming is a pro-social behavior that tends to associate with and promote feelings
So
of
that's for
well-being
your hip
and
flexors.
happiness.
So I've shown the one on
This
the
is
graph.
not a trivial
The
effect.
one back there and
If you
that
look at
one.
brain
Choose
imaging
the one you
data
want.
or other forms of data on this, allo grooming is a very powerful form of
So
bonding
next
between
one
individuals.
would be-
That's completely non-verbal. In fact, most
I
often
guess
it
more for
doesn't
my
involve
adductors
eye
now.
contact. I suppose two people could be looking
Always
at
keep
one
a
another,
chair.
grooming one another, but typically this is done from the side or from behind. Why did I bring up the paper
For
on
support.
pets? Well, it turns out that when
Essentially
humans
all it is
stroke
is, how do I
dogs
give you a good angle on
or
this?
brush their dogs
All
or
it is
stroke
just, you're
cats
just
or
doing the
brush their
splits.
cats,
That's all it
etc.,
is. It's not,
that is a
I
form
can't
of
do the
human to
splits.
animal allo
But that's the
grooming.
aim.
It's one
That's
in
the
which
aim.
both the pet and the human receive huge increases in
my goal is
oxytocin and
hopefully
other
within
related
6 months I get
neurochemicals
to the
that make us
splits.
feel
Highly
bonded.
doubt.
I bring this up because the
Gotta do what you gotta
Harvard
do.
longitudinal
That's
study
all
on
it is.
happiness
Just
and many
see
others,
how far
hundreds of other
you can
studies
spread
on
your legs
happiness
like this.
point to
That sounds
the
terrible,
importance
but
of
it is what it
quality
is.
social connection. You hear this over and over again. People on their deathbeds don't say
I
they
need that
wish
support,
they had
especially
worked
when I'm
more.
getting
People
up.
on their deathbeds
I need to sort of
talk
lift
about
myself
the richness
off
of
the
social
floor.
connections or the wish that they had invested more in social connections. I think a lot of people think of social connections only in terms of travel with or conversation with others, but much of what
I'm not
we
expected to get into the entire
perceive
camera. That's
as
all it is.
deep social
Just
connection
see how far you can bring your
also
legs
involves
apart.
physical contact, and that's something that's deeply rooted, in our evolutionary biology.
And I'll
and
hold
it's
that for
present
about, yeah,
within us
a minute,
and in
as
non-human
usual.
primates, and
I'm not the most
it's clear
flexible.
that
I've
we
only
can
started this program maybe
engage
about
in
3
these
weeks
kinds
ago.
of pro-social,
But that's what it takes. You
non-verbal,
just gotta start somewhere.
non-eye contact type behavior.
I've mainly been into
through
fitness
things like
training, barely ever stretched.
non-sexual tactile
Told
touch,
myself, you know,
AKA.
once I get to that
So
crossroad
we've
when
been
I do
talking
need
about a
more
number of the different
mobility
things
and
that one can
flexibility,
do in
I'll do
order
it then.
to increase
But
levels of
one of my
happiness.
patients who
And
I chatted
certainly
to,
before we
amazing
conclude
guy, he's
today,
like 70
we're going
years
to
old or
touch back
something, maybe
into
60. I should
not just
give him
synthetic
that at
happiness
least,
and the
but
various things we can do,
most
such as
flexible dude
pro-social
ever.
spending,
Loves his
allo
fitness,
grooming,
tells me
social
all about it.
connection,
And you know,
etc. But
if he's that
also
age
things
and lives the way he
related to
does, he's probably
happiness
doing
that
something right.
involve
So, yeah.
focus on
That's how it
vocation
started.
and work
And ever
pursuit
since,
of goals, because
yeah,
as
I'll
I
just make sure
mentioned
to try
at
to
the beginning,
stretch every day.
those are also
Every
critical
day.
to
what it
increasing
takes.
our state of happiness and certainly our state
Oh
of
my
security and the feeling that we can provide for ourselves, perhaps for others as well. We will talk about that, but I think it's also important to talk about this
That's why I
notion
have this
of
here. I don't
choice
even know
and
what time I'm up to.
choices and whether or not having a lot of freedom to choose or limited freedom in choosing what we do and what we get and what we are able to pursue in life, how that relates to both natural happiness and synthetic happiness. Dan Gilbert and others have explored this issue of freedom of choice and how it relates to happiness. And there, I must say, the findings are incredibly
Alright.
counterintuitive,
So once the
but
adductors are
very,
done,
very well supported by all of their data.
um,
I'm going to summarize a large amount
Hamstrings
of
now,
those
I
things
guess.
at once by saying the following. Dan's
Remember, a minute
laboratory
each
and other
stretch.
laboratories
Reason
have
why I
done
say a minute
experiments where
is
they give people a series of
you
options.
need about a minute
One
because
of the more classic
that's
examples.
what you need to have a
they give
biophysical
people
change.
the
You do
opportunity
anything
to
less
rate
than a
number
minute,
of
it
different
feels good.
paintings or pictures in
I get that. It
ascending
feels
or
absolutely
descending
good.
order of preference.
But you're not really doing
In other
anything.
words,
You're
they
just
decide
you're just
which
feeling
one
good. You're
most,
giving
which ones
yourself a
they
bit of
like.
placebo, thinking like, sweet,
And
I've
what's
done my
interesting
stretches, but no.
is the experimenter
You gotta hold it for at least
will
a minute.
vary
I
the
tell my
extent to
patients
which
30
they
seconds
have
to a
stick
minute,
to that choice.
only
So
because
they're
I know them.
sticking to the choice
I
by
know
receiving
if
the
I could just get
paintings to
any
home,
mobility
or in another experiment
from them,
it was
I'd be
having
pretty
to make
happy.
a choice between giving up one photograph that the research subject took, or another photograph.
So
that
this
they
one's a
took. One of the
hamstring, but if you grab your
photographs was
toes
gonna
and
go
pull it
off to
towards
a
yourself,
publication, another
it's a
one they
calf
could keep
stretch
for
as well.
themselves. And the conditions in that experiment
This
were
foot 90 degrees
either
that way,
that
this foot straight
you
up.
had to make the decision and
Simple.
it was final.
Lean towards
that
it.
is, you could
Don't
keep
just
one
bend towards it.
and rate
You want
your
to hinge
decision,
from your hip
or
and
you
bend
could keep
towards
one,
it
and then you had
to
the
accentuate the
opportunity
stretch.
to swap out
because that's all you
that
need to
picture
do.
for
You just
the other one
bend,
at some
you're just
later time. In other
stretching
words,
through your back now. You're not
these
actually
experiments
stretching
really
through your
weren't about
hamstrings.
rating
I
pictures.
haven't
They
checked
were
the timer
really
yet, so
about
now I've got to
whether or
start
not
from, let's say,
constraining your choice,
10 seconds ago.
Mm.
So once it hits 40
forcing
again.
somebody to make a choice and stick to that choice led to greater levels or lesser levels of happiness and satisfaction with that choice. And what they find consistently is that when people have an ongoing set of choices, it leads to reduced levels of happiness. Now, that might come as surprising to many of you, but I want to be clear about what this means. This is not to say that having a lot of choices of what you like most leads to lesser happiness, and that having fewer choices about things you do or objects you acquire, etc., leads to greater happiness. What this set of experiments really points to is that when we make a choice, if we are forced to stick to that choice, we tend to be far
10
happier
more
with that
seconds.
choice than if we maintain the option to change our mind. The results of these experiments are extremely informative, I believe, in terms of understanding our real life happiness, that is,
And on the
happiness
other side.
outside the laboratory. But I think they are often misunderstood.
I've got a
as
towel
meaning
there
that
because if
we
I
have
put
a
my
lot of
heel on
choices,
anything, it
we
just
tend to be
hurts.
less happy than if we have fewer choices. That is not the case. Having freedom of choice is terrific and actually correlates with elevated levels of happiness. But once we make our choice, it's clearly the case that killing all other choices or having all other
Another
options
minute.
killed for us increases our satisfaction with the choice that we've made. Whereas leaving doors open, leaving options open,
I'll admit,
greatly diminishes
like
our
exercise
sense of
when I first
satisfaction.
started, it sucked.
This
Same as
has
stretching,
been
it
exported to
sucks.
any number of different domains.
But if it was
so
easy, then
this has
anyone
been
could do it.
exported to the domain
Simple as
of
that.
making choices
If it was
about
easy,
what
everyone
college
would
to
be
go to
flexible. If it was
or
easy,
what partner
everyone
to
would be
select
fit.
in life.
But that's not how life works,
In every one of
unfortunately.
those instances,
You gotta put in that
we
effort
see that our happiness
see
with our
results.
choice is very much related to that
Ah!
choice being either the only one or one of very few other options. There are a number of different ways to interpret this.
And I always keep forgetting
Through
to
the lens
breathe.
of neuroscience, we might say
Breathing absolutely
that
helps.
the prefrontal cortex, the area of the brain that's involved in decision making and evaluating different options, is an area of the brain that's vital, frankly, to our evolution as human beings and to our daily life and to our whole life. It
Don't
is, of
count
course,
down
the
the
thing that
seconds,
allows
just
us
makes
to
it feel longer.
evaluate different
Jesus.
rule sets, to change rule sets, to switch contexts, and to create
So
meaning,
that's
etc.
my
to
hamstrings,
interpret what's
alright,
good,
my
what's bad.
calves.
But it's also a fairly
Find
costly
any wall.
process, meaning
I
it's
normally
very
do it over there,
metabolically
but I don't want to move the
demanding.
camera.
There's an entire
Find any
literature
wall.
related to what's
Place
called
your hand
ego
against it.
depletion. This is certainly a
Just
topic
lunge.
for a future
That's it.
podcast,
Just
but
lunge
ego
forward.
depletion essentially says that if I have you attend very intensely to a given task, for instance, asking you to count backwards from 1,000 to 0 in increments of 13, and then have you switch about halfway through, that's hard for a lot of people. If I have you do that, then your ability to suppress impulsive behavior and to do a hard cognitive or physical task immediately after that is actually suppressed. This is called ego depletion. It relates to a number of different things, but it certainly relates to engagement of the prefrontal cortex, which is very metabolically demanding. So evaluating choices and doing computation of numbers or attending to things with your mind and forcing yourself to focus intensely is metabolically demanding, and that's a limited resource that can be reset by things like sleep and non-sleep deep rest or idle time or letting your mind wander, in that case positive mind wandering, to allow your brain to reset the ability of focus. But the other thing that it does is it impacts the reward circuitry
footnote
of the brain,
for
the so-called
calf
dopamine
stretches.
reward circuitry and other reward
So this is
circuitries
probably
in the
one of the
brain.
muscles I don't stretch.
And here I'm painting with
When
a
you're
broad
stretching
brush, but
straight
it
out like
essentially
this and your knee is
divides
straight,
them such that, for instance,
you're working your
if a
gastrocnemius
given
muscle.
choice of a, let's
But
say,
once you bend your
partner
knees to
or
stretch,
maybe
you're
buy
now
yourself
stretching
an article of
soleus.
clothing, not that I want to
Two
compare,
different muscles within your
selection of
calf.
a life partner to
I
selection
mainly
of an
do
article of clothing,
gastrocs
but just to give multiple examples,
because you are still
might
technically
give us
stretching
here it's
soleus,
arbitrary units,
but
X
to get a more accentuated stretch for
units
soleus,
of dopamine
you gotta bend your knee
increase.
now. The back knee, I mean.
Well, if we
But
buy
once
that
you
article
straighten
of
out,
clothing or
you're
we
now working
select
your
that life
gastrocs.
partner, and then we
Soleus
emerge
would be a
from
good stretch,
the
especially
store
for
or the
marathon
wedding,
runners. I
and
just
we
recently
are
learned that
focused on what
soleus
we
is mainly
purchased
for. It's
ourselves,
got a very.
our choice or our life partner
It's got
choice.
good use for endurance,
And only that, well, then there's a certain amount of
and I haven't been
neurochemical
counting. So
reward associated with that. And
let's say
happiness
50
and
seconds.
well-being. But it's also very clear that if we
I've got
leave
flat
those
feet, so I
choices,
get
the
tight
store
calves just
or
naturally.
our wedding, for instance, our life with
That's just the
somebody
hand that I was
for a
dealt,
moment,
or
even
that's
just
probably because of
mentally,
all the
and start thinking
Converse
about
shoes
the
I used to
other
wear.
options that we might entertain as possible, if those are still open to us in reality or in our mind, then
Before I learned
our
flat feet
reward
was even a
circuitry
thing.
becomes fractured in a way, not physically fractured, but less attention is devoted
30
to the
more
reward
seconds.
circuitry of associated with our choice. And as a consequence, instead of it being X units of dopamine, it's X divided by however many other choices we might have available to us in our mind or in reality. Okay, so instead of, again, these are arbitrary units, but instead of a certain amount of reward, it's a certain amount of reward divided by the number of other options that we might be considering as alternatives to what we chose. And I think this is a very important aspect
Right,
of
next one
understanding
is
how
pretty much
limiting
after
our
I do all my
choices
legs.
after we've made them is a vital part of what we call.
I'm just gonna pause this. I'm gonna have to re-listen to this later because I have not listening to a single thing on this. I'm gonna bring it back to like 140. And instead, I guess I'll just put this timer up. Guess I'll be talking this whole time anyway. Google search. Google search. Is that what I'm looking for? Nope. Let's see. Timer. Timer. You are. Windows. Google search. No. Explorer new. That's not. This is the thing. Whatever. Doesn't matter. It's just so I can put the timer on, that's all. But it doesn't matter. I can just read it out anyway. Anyway, next one. Like I said, just reach for your toes. Simple as that. You stretch through your back, hamstrings, calves. Practically stretch everything. You're going to see the poor form that I'm going to have. But yeah. Essentially that. The hardest part for me is keeping these knees straight. But once you've done your leg stretches, it makes it a little bit easier. So let's see. 1 minute from now. Good thing I've taken my antihistamines already. My goal is for this one is just eventually reach the ground with my palm of my hands. I'm so close yet so far. Ugh. Knuckles maybe, yeah. Work into it slowly. Don't try to force it. Relax your way through it. Make sure to keep breathing. The more you can push it, the better, but you know, again, injury prevention. You don't want to do this and injure yourself. Oh, my little arms. There we go. 1 minute. That was for the back, that was for the legs. So what I normally get into next is my arms. Normally I do it at the table, but for the sake of not moving that camera more, alright, where am I up to? I'll just go straight into wrist flexors. Alright, so flexors, simple. Let's see. Flexors this way, extensors the other way. It's as simple as that. He wanted out ages ago, but anyway. Yeah, simple. Like I said, just palms there. That's it, and then just lean forward. Oh, I guess you're gonna lean back to accentuate the hip flexion, the wrist extension. Wrist extension to stretch your flexors. I guess I sort of saved that one. Yeah, the more you can lean back, the better. Sweet. I normally do it on the table. Now I'm just compromising my back while I'm doing this, but you get the idea. So a minute. I like stretches where I can work two body parts at once. I like saving time. I am a very lazy person. If I can find ways to do this quicker, I would. But if I want to stretch everything, it just takes a certain amount of time to get through it. This is great, especially for me as a manual therapist. I'm always using my hands, always gripping, always palpating. "30 seconds. Yeah, no, look, I get it. Stretching ain't fun. It's boring. Who likes doing it? But it has its benefits. You know? If I had to choose, though, between telling my patients to strengthen or to lengthen, so stretching or exercise, I guess is the best way I can put it, I'd always choose exercise. People, a lot of the times, are underdeveloped. A lot of the times, people need to increase their threshold of what they can handle each and every day. Not saying stretching is bad, just saying if I had to choose one or the other. Then right after that, we look into mobility work. But for now, everyone benefits from a bit of strength work to increase what you have, to be able to handle your everyday life activities. So that was flexors, now extensors, simple. So this way, I went this way, now I'm just going the other way. Simple as that. Ugh. This is terrible for my back. Let's just do this. There we go. That still works. That's still extending. Minute. This one's a bit uncomfortable. Sort of feel it through like one of the bones. Like they're just not meant to be in this position. But extensors very important to stretch. I don't know why. I get more trouble in my extensors than my flexors, even though you're constantly gripping. But there is theory to that though. Every single muscle has an opposing muscle. So it sort of controls how much power, how much output you have within a certain movement. So I guess the more I'm flexing, the more my extensors sort of trying to limit how much I can, grip something. Why it does that is to protect ourselves. If we had no control limits and we could just, if I could just grip anything with all my strength, I would be hurting myself. That's essentially what happens, when the body, I guess, during whiplash, muscle spasms and whatnot, the muscle sort of contracts so quick that it self-injures itself because it's a defense mechanism. It's trying to protect itself. So the same thing here. Our body's just trying to control itself, making sure we don't overdo it. Right, there's that. Next one. All right, next one. The ones I'm showing you guys now, I normally do at my table, just FYI. But this one I learned from Fitness FAQ on YouTube. Great for thoracics, stretching, opening this up, straightening out the back. So if you sort of have that sort of arched sort of posture to fight that, is do this stretch or just open up your chest. But anyway, let's see, where am I up to? 3, let's see. Elbows on,
Go back as far as I can. The weight's there just to accentuate the stretch. You don't need the weight. And essentially what I'm doing now is I'm sort of pushing my chest towards the ground. I normally do this at my desk, but this is just purely just to show you guys. I'm slowly going to cramp in my back, but whatever. Again, great for Terry's, great for rhomboids, but this is mainly for my thoracic spine. So again, I'm aiming my chest towards the ground. So I'm pushing my chest towards the ground to accentuate this stretch. Great for anyone. I'd recommend this to everyone almost, 90% of the world, because most people have that hunch posture. The only example I can give of who I wouldn't give this to is a swimming instructor. But there's a story behind that one after I get up. I'm assuming that's a minute. But yeah, essentially my story for that is, like I said, most people's postures are slightly hunched forward like this. So this is to correct that. My teacher once told me that the only person that they never had to give these exercises to were swimming instructors. Because what happens is most of them, they tend to be in the water shouting instructions, or maybe out, I don't know, not my profession. But you can sort of imagine if you're in the water and you're constantly just looking up, your posture's always up like this, and you're always looking up, compared to the rest of the world that's looking down. Especially at mobiles and everything and all that. But anyway, that's that. Thumbs, I have a dedicated one purely for my thumbs because they are the tools of my trade. How I'm going to show you is, I guess this is good enough. Find anything you can sort of push against. I normally do it at my table once again, but I guess my best example I can show you guys is, pretend that's my table there. I'm sort of pushing my thumbs towards it and letting my thumbs go back towards my arm. What I'm doing is sort of like this. It's not as much, but it will have to do. Yeah, there we go. I don't think you can see it, but try my best. But essentially, I'm pushing forward, and what that's causing is pushing my thumbs back towards my forearms. The thumbs have like multiple different muscles that go towards it, so this is just stretching one of its fibers. There's other stretches as well, but this is a pretty good one. It's not too bad. You don't even have to do this. I do this because I get to hit two muscles at the same time, but if you want to do it yourself one at a time, you just grab your thumb and just pull it back towards you. That's it. Simple as that. Find that online anywhere. People hopping in probably thinking like, what is this guy doing? This is just to show you. Normally I do this at the desk. And normally without a... I'll try to do it more. It is very important. It is important. Still, strength greater than... You'd rather have strength. You'd rather be able to do what you can do. Rather not be able to do it because you can't do it. Because of your body's limitations. But especially when you get older. Especially when you get older. Especially the elderly. They need more strength than they do flexibility, honestly. So those are my thumbs. My neck. Yeah. My neck. My neck. Simple. Grab, bend. That's to accentuate the stretch with this arm. Concentrate on the elbow dropping to the ground. Then you're stretching from both sides, from your shoulder and your neck itself. sometimes gets to the point that it feels like I'm about to rip my neck off. But play around with it, move your head around, up and down, see what gets you, see what accentuates the stretch for you the most. Oh my gosh. Ugh. After a neck stretch, I like to move it around a little bit. Honestly, my flexibility is still terrible, but compared to what it was 3 weeks ago, you would not believe. You would not believe at all. It would be a struggle for me to do all these stretches. Anyway, last one, glutes. Glutes. Always forget glutes. I do glutes a bit different because I'm lazy, but multiple ways to skin a cat. Glad Cheddar's not here. The most basic one that most people know. Is essentially 1 foot over the other knee. You pull it towards yourself. Simple. I guess I'll do this one, then I'll show you the alternative one that I give to my patients, because when you give exercises to your patients, you gotta limit the amount of excuses that they can give you for not being able to do it. And the one I give is essentially this for their glutes, but except you can do it seated. And if you're sitting down, not much of an excuse not to be able to do it, unless you've got pain or something, or some sort of personal restriction. I don't even know where I'm up to. I'm just going to give it another 15 seconds. Oh, but yeah, you should feel that through the bottom. Great for runners once again. Great for anyone that's on their feet, honestly. The glutes are consistently working for as long as you're standing. You guys another angle. I think I'm tighter on my right side. But remember to breathe. Because if you're not breathing, then you're tensing. I'm not even looking at the counter. Okay. 40 seconds. Like I said, the alternative to this one is I can show you how I do it when I prescribe to my patients. It's so basic. You just sit down, put 1 foot over the other knee, just like this one, and just lean forward. That's it. Simple. move it however you need to, just as long as you feel the stretch through your glutes and that. Not hard. Where am I? 20 more seconds. And remember with these stretches, about hinging from the hip, not from your back. Just because you're bending from your back towards it doesn't mean you're getting more of a stretch. You're just losing some of that tension elsewhere. Alright, like I said, variation, very simple. A lot of people, a lot of office workers, a lot of desk workers, very simple, sitting down and whatnot. One foot over the other one. I normally do this one, but just to show you guys that alternative. That's it. Once you're there, hinge forward. Simple, and you'll feel it through your glutes. Another angle, one over the top, and then yeah, just hinge forward. Don't bend forward. This does nothing. This does nothing. If I keep us straight back, bend, that's where you get the stretch. Or you can bend like this, the better. Hinging through your hip, not through your back. Stretching through your hip, sorry, not through your back. I think that's it. That's pretty much my whole entire stretch program from practically every muscle in the body almost. Like if I had, one more, biceps. I always forget this one. Biceps. People just think, how do people stretch their biceps like this? I guess so. What's a really basic one, I guess? But biceps, they don't only just flex our shoulders, they don't only flex our elbow, but they flex our shoulder as well. So you need to get this into an extended position while you're flattening this out. One that my mate showed me forever ago, but I still do. But I don't prescribe because you sort of have to hinge on your thumbs. What I mean by that is, my thumbs are turned inwards and they're placed at the corner of a table. I normally do it with a table, but I'll do it with this chair. Once like that, so it's internally rotated, I'm going to extend my arms. That's my shoulders. That's the extension from the shoulders. I keep my elbows straight. So this is to stretch your biceps. The only thing that's on my couch are my thumbs. I don't give this to my patients in case I give them thumb injuries. Unless they're an athlete or they know what they're doing, then I'll tell them. But essentially I'm just leaning forward, trying to get more extension into my shoulder. Where am I? Alright, 1 minute. But yeah, that's basically it. Did the whole lower body, uppers, neck, chest, upper back. Oh no, there's one more. Triceps at the same time. That sort of stretches my rhomboids as well. I'll show that right after this. My thumbs sort of start to fatigue as well, so I sort of have to like grit through it a little bit. But a minute's not bad. I tend to make it to a minute at least. Four more seconds. Plus the getting up part gets a bit dangerous too, I guess, if you don't like this control it. Alright, last one, simple, just that. Triceps, rhomboids as well. Rhomboids, I find it to be the most hardest muscle to stretch. The rhomboids are just sort of floating there between your scapula and your spine. But this is one that you can do for your rhomboids. I'll show you another one after this. Rhomboids are good to stretch because they're part of our postural muscles. They're the only muscles that are sort of stopping us from having those forward rounded shoulders. So you can sort of see how much they're working. The more rounded shoulders you are, the more tightness you're going to have in your rhomboids. That spot in the back of your back, in between your shoulder blades. So there's this one, sort of accentuate it through. You sort of got to relax the shoulder as well, just let it sort of open itself up. So I'm just dragging it across. more seconds. And I'll show you the variation. Variation works best if you have like sort of like a door or something like that, like a pillar even. Even with this, I guess, as long as you just have something to hold, and you sort of lean back. And what happens when you lean back, by holding your hands here, you're sort of dragging your arm out this way. You do both of them, then both of them are dragging forward. And by doing that, you're hoping to get the two shoulder blades at the back to sort of split open as well. You got to concentrate on those rhomboids and sort of relax through your shoulder blades. The hands are here, then I lean back. It's better if I had a pillow. I normally say, pretend there's a door here, you open it up and you've got like one side of the door. You can at least hold the sides of the door. You just sort of hold it and just drag yourself back, and then it'll stretch both rhomboids for you. So you just need some sort of pillow or something like that. Right, 1 minute on this side. And again, reconfirming, 1 minute every stretch. Any less, it just feels good. Give yourself a bit of placebo, thinking, sweet, I stretched. But to get some sort of biological, physiological change, you gotta hold it for a minute. I know it sucks, it's a drag, but unfortunately that's just what it takes. I tell my patients this, and they're like, really? I only stretch for like 10 seconds, 20 seconds. And I'm like, I get it. I think you're doing the right thing, and you are. At least you are doing something. If you want proper benefits out of it, you want to get to that minute mark. 15 more seconds. I think that's every muscle. I think. Might have missed a small one here and there. Soleus's one is definitely which I don't specifically stretch, because this is going to add another 2 minutes to this already close to 50-minute stretch routine. There we go. So if you want to know it, I showed it before. That's a calf stretch. So you lunge forward, back leg straight. But once you bend that back leg, I probably do need it because I can barely bend it. Once you bend that back leg, you're now stretching soleus. But once you straighten that out, you're now stretching gastrocnemius. Two different muscles within your calves. Oh, alright, so let's do a minute on soleus because I can feel how tight it is. And obviously, yeah, probably needs it. Probably needs it. Where are we? 30 seconds. It's not one that tends to be needed, like unless you specifically, like I said, unless you're a marathon runner, this muscle tends to be used quite a bit. But for some reason, with recent research, it says soleus muscles, pretty much they're good for endurance. They're made to be used. They're made to last quite a bit. But for some reason, our gastrocs, you know, your calves when you get a massage or you stretch those out, painful as hell. They're the main big ones that people use when you're using every day and whatnot. Soleus is the one that can just keep going. But if you have a problem with that, then you've got problems. Like I said, marathon runners, bike riders, they tend to get that sort of thing. Soccer players even. Anything that to do with running. So again, straight, that's my gastrocnemius. Bent, soleus now. Actually, I recently had to give this stretch to a swimmer, actually. That makes sense. What do I say? They were asking for calf stretches, but for some reason calf stretches wasn't doing enough for them. So then I showed them the soleus stretch, and it actually helped. So it does work. But the hard part is staying committed. Just like any exercise, you got to turn it into a habit. It's not easy. Like I said, it's not easy. If it was easy, everyone would be flexible. If it was easy. I'm no yoga master either. I only started this about 3 weeks ago, but I've been consistent. I've been doing it every single day, and there is benefit, especially if you train one. Even if you don't train, it helps. As long as you're just doing something. 15 more seconds. The best way I described it to someone was, it was nice to be able to move without feeling impeded. It was nice to go through certain range of motions without my own body restricting itself. Another way someone else described it was, it's almost like setting yourself free, like you were trapped in your own body and you didn't realize you could move. Okay. Alright. Legs, done. Lower body, done. Upper body, done. Did that stretch. Neck, done. But yeah, that's it. That's it for today. I do these stretches every single day now. And like I said, if I'm lazy, I'll start in my chair. The hard part with any exercise is just starting. So if you're lazy, just start it. I say the same thing for working out as well. Just start for the first 15 minutes. See how you go there, and then eventually your body you eventually, how do I say, you motivate yourself. Once you get started, you motivate yourself and you get into the workout. Say with my stretches, if I'm lazy, I start in my chair. I sit here and I'm watching something, and like I said, I just start doing these. I have my timer on my phone, get to about a minute. Once I do my whole entire seated routine, I'll be like, sweet, that's half done. That's my upper body. All I gotta do now is get up and just do my lower body. So the main thing is just to get started. Anyway, ultra basic stretches. You'll find more online, but this is essentially everything that I do. It's simple, not too overly complicated. Push yourself as well, because when you go through these stretches, there may be pain. Pain's very normal when you do this sort of thing. I like to tell my patients that you can feel a 5 out of 10 pain personally. You find your 5 out of 10, but anything more than that, pull it back. Take it a bit easier. But like I said, all these exercises, all these stretches, there will be a bit of pain. But if it exceeds that 5, yeah, pull it back. But if it's less, that's okay. That's normal. That means you're reaching certain barriers, that you're reaching levels of uncomfortability, which is where you find improvement. Yeah, anyway. I'm no yogi master and whatnot. You'll find them online, but this is just what I do. I'm lazy. I just like to keep it simple. That's why I like to keep it not overly complicated. But anyway, I'm going to go take a shower. I'm not taking one today since work and whatnot. Alright, anyway, that's TMI now, I guess. Alright, take care. Thanks for joining in. Till next time. Oh yeah, that's right. I'll be working out on Friday, as long as my boss doesn't need me to come in early, so that'll be Friday morning. If not, it'll be Friday night. This weekend, once again, I'll be away. Normally I do my manual therapist exercises for my wrist and my grip strength, but plenty of videos on that on YouTube. My videos as well, whichever one you want to look at, doesn't really matter. I like to show what works for me. Again, I'm a very lazy person. I like to find things that work quick and easy, not take too long. But yeah, anyway, you guys have a good night.